Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, Objectively Dan, and this is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk to people about what they believe and why. If you'd like to call us, you can do that at 512-991-9242, or you can do it through your computer at tiny.cc/calltw. Truth Wanted is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And every single week, I always have a special guest. This week is no different. It's Brennon Goodson. Brennon, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm super excited to be here. Can't wait to get in the show and start taking callers.
Thank you, Brandon, and I'm glad that you are excited to get here. Here's the thing, right? Everybody that does stuff, almost everybody that does stuff for the Atheist Community of Austin is volunteers. That's what makes up most of what we do here. And so we have a volunteer form for anybody who wants to come do stuff, and we also have it for hosts. A lot of people don't realize it, but we do. And the truth is, for most of our guests, right, we usually invite our guests to come on, and we do it this way. But this time is different. Brennan, you were the first person who sought after the volunteer form on their own and signed up for it to be a host. And we are picking you tonight to be on the show. So you're our first for Truth Wanted in like the 4 years now we've been doing this show. So I hope you feel special. And Brennan, if people haven't heard your name, that's because you're not a content creator. You don't have a YouTube channel yet, although you're working on it. You don't have a book or anything. You are just a dude as far as this show is concerned, which is awesome because we always have people in the space doing stuff, but I'm glad we just have somebody who's just likes this show and likes these conversations. So I'm glad that you're here, Brennan.
Oh yeah. Most of the time when I'm watching, I am a long time watcher. I just want to add to the conversation, and it led me to seek it out. I asked earnestly in an email how I could be a part of the show and what I could do, and that's what got me here. Honestly, super grateful to be here.
And we're super happy that you're here too. And so anybody who, and not just for hosting positions, but who wants to volunteer in any capacity, whether it be for audio stuff, whether it be for other kinds of things we do behind the scenes, call screening, video stuff, things like that, you can always email the show, and you can find links to that in the description and when I talk about it later as well. So yeah, just a thing out there that we do. Again, every host that's ever been on here does not get paid for this. We're all volunteers. So Brennan, thanks so much for being on. Let's talk about you for a second. Who is Brennon Goodson? What's your relationship like with the kind of things we talk about on this show, that being religion, skepticism, conspiracies, things like that?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I take a great interest in it. The way that people's minds work, as far as what they think and how they think, I find extraordinarily fascinating. Not only that, but this kind of candid conversation where you kind of get to pick the brains of someone who calls in and has a strong opinion about something that they would, in most cases, defend well past its expiration date. I think that it's incredible to be a part of it, and just hearing all of the information that comes from the hosts, and especially learning about the topics that the callers bring in, it can only help it can help especially in an understanding when it comes to talking to people that you know in a personal sense. And it also, I feel like it furthers the conversation for everyone involved, and just overall keeps everyone sharp. I mean, there's no
Mhm.
better way to put it. You want to be sharp when you come across a conversation like this in the wild, especially if you have something to defend.
Yeah. So Brandon, you'd call yourself a skeptic. I know that much about you, right? So have you always been in this space where you are thinking about these things in a skeptical way? Have you ever, thought about being religious at one point in your life? Did you describe yourself as religious, or did you describe yourself as someone who believed in alternative beliefs?
So it's an excellent question. For a good portion of my life, I thought that I could have been religious. I didn't necessarily understand all of the like minutia that went along with it. Um, and as I grew up, kind of in my early adolescence, I really took a look at the claims critically, and kind of came to the conclusion on my own without much input from family or anything that I just it never fully clicked for me. And as a teen, I guess I probably was pretty angsty and a little standoffish and combative towards those in my personal life who had some religious affiliation. Um, and as an adult who kind of understands a little bit more of the nuance of everything as a system, I like to think of myself as much more religious positive, but not super sympathetic in every way. There are some things that are uh, inexcusable, which I'm sure have been brought up on the show in the past.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, right? Like the things that are like super dangerous, you want to be able to call out, but it's not like, I don't know. It's hard using that identifier as skeptic because so many people use it and they're really not skeptical of anything. And also at the same time, there is this synonym of skeptic with asshole, which
Yeah.
is definitely, a connotation out there. So it is kind of a balance with that. So you were never, and you didn't have any weird beliefs growing up. You didn't have anything that you later changed your mind on because you kind of got into the skepticism stuff, anything like that?
Uh, I'd say for a while I did. I'd say for a while I did have a belief in like ghosts. I had a little bit of a personal experience growing up with what I would call a ghost. But as a kid, I was easily spooked, and I let that definitely lead the situation. I've had some stuff that is unexplainable, for sure, but that doesn't mean that there's no explanation. It just, rather I wouldn't have the ability to explain it personally.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, Brennan, because you're not a typical host, you're not used to the whole hosting thing, being on YouTube thing. I totally get it. So, what I have for you today is something special that we can kind of do together and explore. Okay. I'm doing a mini Dan's deep dive today that I want you to kind of join with me on this adventure. Now, this is a mini deep dive because I'm really just going to be talking about this one article that I found. If you notice in the background here, I've got some dinosaur stuff. And I found this article a little while back that I am bringing to your attention today because I just think it's really funny. And I just want to share it with you and everybody else on this show. So the title of this article, well, first of all, this is coming from the Christian Broadcasting Network. If you're familiar with the Christian Broadcasting Network, you may have heard of Pat Robertson, notable televangelist and gay hater and all kinds of other labels, and surprisingly still alive. That dude is old, like super old, but they have this whole he started this network called the Christian Broadcasting Network, which again is this media organization that produces Christian television and Christian radio shows and all kinds of other broadcasting stuff, and they sometimes will do interviews for their website. And I found this one that really struck my eye, and the title of this is called "Did Dinosaurs Really Exist? A Christian Response." So we're going to take a look at this together, Brennan. And I want you to tell me what you think about this, okay? So this
All
is
right.
with their This is with Chris Carpenter, the director of internet programming there at the Christian Broadcasting Network, who's interviewing this man. I have not read any of this guy's books. I have not seen anything outside of what's been posted here in this article, but he seems like an interesting guy. He did write this book called Dragons and Dinosaurs, and I think we should just jump right in. This is author Derek Isaacs who's responding to this. So the first question in this interview says, let's talk about this book, Dragons and Dinosaurs. Obvious question to start, and that is, what was your inspiration for writing this? Well, I did a dinosaur dig a little over a year ago where I was up in Montana, and we excavated a large ceratopsian dinosaur, which is kind of like a triceratops. They're the same family. Triceratops had the big horns coming out the front. Well, this ceratops didn't have the horns coming out of the front. It was coming out of the side, kind of like a Texas Longhorn a little bit. It was 34 feet long, and it was just remarkable. And so I was there for 8 days excavating that. And the question is, okay, when did this thing live? According to evolution, they tried to say that dinosaurs died out 65 million years before man came on the scene. Well, according to the Bible, if you just read it literally, which I do, you have a 6-day creation. The land, the creatures were created on day 6 with Adam and Eve, and therefore, that is when the dinosaurs would have also been created. So from our biblical worldview, we would expect to see evidence of man and dinosaur coexisting. Now, who's letting this man go out to dinosaur digs if he doesn't even believe in evolution? Right, Brandon? Like, what do you think is happening here? Because I could not find this guy's credentials online. I don't know if he's part of some creationist university or what, but like, if I had some land with dinosaurs on it, I don't know I'd let him touch it, right?
Yeah, that sounds awfully convenient for him to have not only been somewhere where a dinosaur dig was happening, but to find something that he seems to think is quite remarkable. And it certainly does bring to question what series of events led to him actually being invited. I mean, if he even was invited.
Yeah, so I don't know. I seriously could not find it. If somebody else can find more info on this guy, I could. But it's really funny. But we get more into it here. So let me keep going with this, okay? So the next question goes, your book brings forth some new theories, perhaps some things that haven't really been thought about or discussed much before that lends evidence on dinosaurs and dragons. Take a moment to outline this, if you could. And here's his response. A few years ago, there was a Tyrannosaurus rex bone found in Montana by an evolutionary team. The leader was Mary Schweitzer, and the bone actually had red blood cells still in it. Side note, I love that they call it an evolutionary team. It was just like a team of paleontologists, but I guess to him, that's an evolutionary team. I don't know what he calls himself. Is he just like the creationist team? And this is the evolutionary team? Are all paleontologists the evolutionary team? I don't know. Anyway, so the bones actually had red blood cells still in it. It has soft, stretchable tissue. It had collagen, protein fragments, things like that. And one of the things that she says is that red blood cells don't preserve. And I would agree with that 100%. You cannot have red blood cells and those other soft, stretchable things inside of a bone last for 68 million years. And I would actually even say that fossils can't even last 68 million years. Because when we were excavating the dinosaur, we call him Big John, one of the things you always find inside of all the rock is something we call slip and slides, where we can see evidence of just the earth slightly moving and creating skid marks, if you will, on rocks. And so our earth constantly has some gyration to it. And the whole idea that a fossil can remain undisturbed for 68 million years without really being ground to dust, I reject that on its core assumption. So, first of all, I want to point out Mary Schweitzer's discovery when it came to the possibility of red blood cells in a Tyrannosaurus is controversial in the scientific community, but is a legitimate discovery. There's a lot of interesting work that's been done in molecular biology, specifically talking about this case and its implications. Now, Mary Schweitzer believes that the Earth, and specifically dinosaurs, is like at least 68 million years old. Like, she's not a young Earth creationist. She is a Christian, but she does talk about the implications of this. A great video about this topic, if you're not familiar, is John Perry from the channel stated clearly, actually did a whole video talking about this specific discovery because of how common it is from young Earth creationists to bring this up. Now, I'm not going to be the one to tell you the exact instances on how red blood cells may or may not be able to be preserved. There's a lot of stuff talking about chemistry and stuff there, but like that's it. There was this one thing that this guy pointed out, like that may or may not be red blood cells, and like that's what he's basing this off of. So
Yeah,
pretty wild, right?
if I could add, the discoverer actually said that they absolutely hate when people try and use that discovery as proof that the Earth is young, and
Yes.
they're which just kind of goes to show how prolific the cherry picking is here. It's only the ripest.
It definitely is. And again, just really funny when you're contradicting the person who's making this discovery and what they claim to be. Now, obviously, she could be wrong about what she thinks this is, but she's not going into this thinking that dinosaurs and people were living at the same time, and nobody who's ever actually examined the evidence seriously has either, right? So moving on in this interview, here's the next question. It says, is there a difference between a dragon and a dinosaur? So now we're getting to the good stuff, baby. We're talking about them dragons. Okay, so his response is, we're told that dragons were mythological. Dinosaurs were supposed to be 68 million years separate from us. But the thing about dragons is that the phenomenon of dragon legends across the globe. Yeah, that's what that says. That doesn't make any grammatical sense, but whatever. If you're in China, if you're in Australia, Africa, Europe, North America, South America, there is this one consistent image, and it's a large-scale reptilian creature. A lot of them have 3 toes and with heads like alligators, and they just go into these great descriptive elements that sound just like scale for scale what we would think a dinosaur is. And even the 3 toes is amazing because so many of the dinosaurs have 3 toes, 3 claws. So the details are shocking. And so that is my position, that dragon mythology actually arose out of mankind actually encountering real dinosaurs a few thousand years ago. Now, I like this idea that human beings just like can't make up stuff at all and can't have like any commonalities within their cultures. First of all, I'm not an expert on this, but I don't think every single dragon ever depicted has only had 3 toes. I feel like that's a weird thing to base off of. But also, if you look at the way these are depicted, yeah, they're kind of similar, but also really different. First of all, these dragons had like wings and like 4 arms and stuff, right? If we're talking about like medieval Europe, but then also if you're talking about like Chinese mythology, it's just like a serpent that flies in the air with no wings at all, which is not a dinosaur that we've found yet. And not to mention, like, dinosaurs encompass a lot of different kinds of creatures, not just one singular kind. And yeah, maybe these depictions would talk about different creatures, but we're talking about thousands and thousands of different species of this thing that we know from a scientific perspective just couldn't live at the same time. They were just adapted for different environments and different places. So I don't know if this guy just Googled dinosaur things around the world, because I didn't even think every continent has had depictions of dragons, but I don't know. What do you think, Brett?
It's interesting, actually. At some time ago, I believe I watched a video. I wish I could remember who it was by to give him credit, but it was an excellent dive on it. There's a genetic disposition for most mammal creatures to fear snakes, and that, in the opinion of the person who posted the video and myself, it certainly does line up with why there would be such an ethos around dragon fear. It just takes what's scary about a snake and turns it up to 10, and then adds every scary thing you could possibly imagine, like fire and giant leathery wings and sharp talons on toes. It's very clear that there are a combination of creatures here that are represented in many of these cultures around the world that are all known as dragon.
Yeah.
And it's certainly interesting to think that, oh no, all of these people just saw the same dinosaur creature, but in reality, I mean, they're, like you said, there's too many niches that these creatures filled that their anatomy is perfectly suited for. And as far as, giant flying fire breathing creature dragon, there's no evidence for.
Yeah. Again, I don't know who let this guy on digging sessions. Like, I guess you don't have to believe all that to like dig fossils out really good, but like I have no formal degree in biology or paleontology or anything, and I can still come up with arguments for why this thing is bad. So we are going to get to calls in just a bit here, folks. So again, if you want to talk to us, you can do that 512-991-9242. Maybe you think the Earth is actually 6,000 years old, or maybe you think Jesus Christ rose from the dead, or maybe you think crystals can heal people. Whatever it is, please give us a call. We'd love to talk to you. I'm going to move to a different part in this article, which is really juicy. So here's another question being asked. It's in your book. What's your biggest argument that supports creation? I'm sure you have many different angles you're coming at on this topic. Is there anyone that you think more compelling than the others? And here's his answer. Yes. And it's a spiritual one. In Revelation 13, times it refers to Satan or Antichrist, beast to dragon. All right. To me, that's very profound because the analogy only works if it's a real analogy. If dragons are mythological with no bearing on reality, then God just compared the deceiver of the world, the murderer from the beginning, Satan, to a mythological make-believe creature. And that, to me, is not consistent with the character of God to go, this creature, Satan, who wants to kill you, is kind of like a make-believe dragon. And that is the most powerful argument for me personally, because it shows that dragons were in fact real, or else the analogy that God used on Satan failed. And God wanted very clearly to point out the lethality of Satan. Satan is a creature who is carnivorous. He wants to kill you. If dragons were in fact real, then an analogy of Satan just doesn't work. And that points to dinosaurs existing with man. And when dinosaurs do exist with man, the theory of evolution is demolished. Okay. There's a lot of things there. Like a lot of things there. So first of all, the Bible mentions other kinds of mythological creatures. The Nephilim, I'm sorry to say, do not exist. As far as I know, angels, demons also don't exist. If you go to Jewish folklore, golems don't exist. I mean, they are things that they say that don't exist. I remember there's a letter from one of the early church fathers, Origen, who mentions referring to Jesus like the phoenix, and he's like talking about the phoenix as if it's a real animal. I mean, doesn't exist. And talking about the book of Revelation is really interesting because that's one of the last books of the Bible that was ever written, meaning that was only a little less than 2,000 years ago when that book was written. So we're not talking about dinosaurs existing 6,000 years ago. If they're talking about a contemporary living dinosaur, that would have been 2,000 years ago, meaning he's saying dinosaurs would have been around when Jesus was walking around. So I don't know, man. That's
What I think
that's really
is
sad.
even more interesting is I wonder how far back you can go in the translations of the text before it doesn't mean not dragon, before it doesn't mean
Dragons.
dragon anymore. Yeah, I wonder how far back in the translations you can go before it's no longer dragon and instead it's just monster. And before that, what is the literal translation of the original text? It's hard to tell what specifically the language could have been in the original text, considering it's been translated so many times through so many different styles of English, and not to mention Hebrew and Greek. There's no way to tell for sure what the word was originally when it was written down. And the most recent translation of the Bible that he's reading from could have been using that same phrase of dragon so far back that it's basically lost all of its original intention and meaning. So it certainly seems that he's drawing this inspiration for calling it a dinosaur from maybe some flimsy flimsy onset information.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was curious about this myself. And he does kind of talk about this in a different point in the interview. But basically, that word dragon that's being used was literally the first English, well, in the King James Bible, right, which was written in about 1611. They use the word dragon in there and they use it multiple times. It's also used in extra biblical text as well. In one of the extra chapters in the book of Daniel, Daniel actually fights a dragon. Like that's in the story. And again, like you point out, that is kind of a Europeanization of this word that they didn't have like a close approximation to. So it's debatable on what actually they're talking about here, but they're definitely talking about a kind of giant monster that's being fought, right? So it is kind of weird. And when people say, "Oh, there aren't dragons in the Bible," I mean, if you look at the King James version, it does say dragon. I guess it doesn't have to actually be a dragon. Who knows? But like, technically, on some Bibles, dragons are in the Bible. It just depends on what Bible you're looking at.
And how
But
literally you
anyway,
take it.
exactly. So I'll read one more here, and then we'll probably get to some calls. Although we still have open lines, so if you want to be first in line to come talk to us on the show, we have a chance to do it. Again, that number is on screen: 512-991-9242, or visit tiny.cc/calltw, and we'd love to talk to you. So anyway, here's one more bit I want to take from this. If you walk through the Smithsonian's Museum of Natural History, you will see a dinosaur exhibit that dates dinosaurs to be about 3 million years ago. I have no idea what this article is talking about because dinosaurs were older than 3 million years ago, and like way older than that even. So I don't know what that's even talking about. And it says, yet if you believe the Bible, the book of Genesis came to be about 7,000 years ago. That is quite a disparity. What's going on? And here's his response to that. It goes back to Charles Lyell, who was a geologist in the early 19th century. He actually stated that he wanted to free the scientists from Moses. He's the one that came up with the idea of uniformitarianism, or he popularized it, I should say. He popularized uniformitarianism, and that is what gave the earth the long, long ages. And as soon as that happened, that undercut Genesis, and that's where the rub came. And so at that point, when they start adding all those vast ages, they need something that lived back then for them to actually say, well, the earth is 3 billion years old. Whatever changes all the time. They have to tell us, well, what was going on back then? Dinosaurs became that poster child for that, and they put them back there. And what's so hard, unless we have compelling evidence to show man and dinosaurs walking together, they're always going to stay there. But now, as I think Daniel 12:4 says, that in the end times, we'll have an increase in knowledge. I think God is pouring that out right now because he has given us a mercy of evidence. We have cave paintings. We have bases. So that's it. What's our evidence that dinosaurs and people were living together? We have cave paintings and vases.
It's
Very
interesting
cool.
that he's sorry to interrupt. It's interesting that he's blaming uniformitarianism on it, basically just saying that conditions are likely to be similar, if not the same, across the entire planet. As if there are different little pockets of the climate everywhere you go. So you're obviously going to expect to see something different everywhere you go. But what he was essentially saying is, if there is a long period of volcanism throughout many rock beds throughout the entire planet, it's safe to assume that there was a global volcanism period that would have caused it. And it really is. I'm not so sure exactly how prolific it is in current geology, but at the time it was certainly a revelation. And the idea that we just invented all these creatures to fill in these gaps rather than finding them in the stratified rock layers all across the world, millions of specimens at this point, it's just ludicrous.
It is ludicrous. And if you take a basic intro to geology course, which I happened to do when I was in college, right? One of the first concepts you are introduced to is uniformitarianism. And at first it might be interesting if you're completely new to the science because it does kind of ask you to make the assumption that the earth does kind of stay uniform in its different layers. and we can assess different bodies of layers relative to other bodies of layers and judge it on that time. Now, of course, it's a little more complicated than that, right? We're not just looking at it from a geological perspective. We're looking at it from a paleontological perspective, right? We have expectations of different dinosaur species and other species besides dinosaurs, by the way, to exist at different fossil layers. And we also use those assumptions to predict where we'll find other kinds of dinosaurs. So that's how we know we'll find, for example, Tyrannosaurus rexes in North America as opposed to other places, because we could look at those different layers. Now, he's kind of saying, this guy is like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. The fossils would just break. But the thing is, like, rocks in and of themselves in those layers do break. Like, fossils do find themselves to be broken all the time. It's actually really hard to find preserved fossils. That's why they're so rare. The ones that we find are the general exception to the rule, in that most living beings that have ever existed in history have not been fully fossilized, right? Or if they have, they're no longer accessible to us. So, you know, it's like part of the actual evolutionary science that he's ignoring has great explanations for the kinds of questions that he's asking. But I think this guy just like Wikipedia'd this man talking about uniformitarianism and other stuff, because, like, again, I don't know his credentials. I haven't been able to figure it out, and it doesn't sound like he went to school for this, because I feel like any professor would be like, this is why you're wrong. So anyway, that's all I really want to talk about with this particular article. I just thought it was really funny, and that headline was grabbing me. But yeah, anytime you see a dragon, that's actually a dinosaur, and the Bible is our proof of it. So there you go. That's my mini deep dive today on just an article I found funny. So real quickly, guys, we are going to get to some calls and anybody that wants to talk to us, but we have to thank our patron of the week, because every single week we always have a patron that we like to thank. I want to thank everybody that donates on patreon.com slash tiny.cc/Patreon TW. I always get the Patreon link wrong. But of course, we always give a special shout out to at least one patron every week. And this week's patron of the week is a name that I am going to try my best with. It is Baboyanu Addy. And if I'm wrong, please yell at me in the comments. But thank you, Baboyanu Addy, for donating. And thank you to everybody who donates on Patreon. If you want to get a shout out, go ahead and try to click that link and figure it out. And guess what, guys? I got a special announcement for you. So we're going to play the clip for that in just a second. Check it out.
Last year, Truth Wanted took you where few people are brave enough to go. The most haunted room of the most haunted hotel in Texas, the Driscoll Hotel. This year, we're bringing things back in-house at the Free Thought Library for the first in-studio episode of Truth Wanted in 2 years. On October 28th at 7 p.m. Central, join me, Objectively Dan, along with ex-Christian Aaron and MD Aware for a night of spooky stories and good fun. And, if we can find any, maybe even some ghostly interactions. If you also happen to find yourself in the Austin area on October 28th, please join me at the Free Thought Library for some free Halloween fun. So remember, always keep wanting the truth, even if it can be a bit scary sometimes.
That's right, folks. We always do something fun on Halloween on this show, and this year is no different. We're doing our Halloween event at the Free Thought Library. It's going to be the first time in over 2 years that we've been able to do a Truth Wanted show in person. So I'm really looking forward to it. We are going to have food for you there. We will have drinks for you there. And we will be able to accommodate a limited number of people, but it is going to be free. So if you're interested in going, check it out. Make some plans. That's going to be next week, next Friday. And you know we're going to be up to some shenanigans. So look forward to that. Brendan, are you ready to take some calls now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to get into it and start hearing from some people.
All right, well, let's get into it here. We have, for our first call of the night, we got Kelly, who's calling in from Michigan. Kelly, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. How's it going, Kelly? Long time no see.
Hi, Brennan. It's good to see you on the show. You had mentioned earlier when you were talking to Dan that you had a ghost experience when you were younger, and I got really curious about that. And I thought if you would tell us about that, I might tell you about my experience working at a haunted bar.
Ooh.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to share it. So, as a kid, hanging out at a what I would reckon to call a sleepover with my uh, middle school friend, childhood friend. We hung out pretty often at his house. He had a trampoline, and we were out at night, hanging out on the trampoline, just doing teenage boy stuff, being rowdy. And he had told me that his house was haunted, and being young and impressionable, I took that very seriously, as a serious threat for sure. And we're hanging out on the trampoline, and a light comes on in his bedroom in the house. Mind you, the only people that would have been in the house were asleep hours before at this point and had no reason to be in his room. Uh, and what I saw in the window appeared certainly to be something that I would call an aberration, which scared me senseless. My friend at the time, he would have said the same. He would have backed me up on the story, and I never really got a satisfying answer for it. But as a skeptic in my adulthood, it certainly does start to come together pretty clearly that it was probably just his parents checking on him, trying to figure out where the hell we were.
That might be a good explanation. But at least you saw something, and now my story isn't as exciting as that because I didn't actually see an apparition. But I worked in a haunted bar for about 10 years in College Town in northern Illinois. And while I never saw the apparition myself, many of the other employees did. The boss definitely said that she had seen her several times, but she was there a lot more than the rest of us was alone during the day. But one night when I was closing the place up, and I would lock up the cash register till in the back room, and I was locking it up, putting a padlock on it, and the light behind me started flickering on and off. And I walked out back into the main bar, and there was two people there, the guy who was the bouncer that night, and my girlfriend at the time that was waiting for me to leave. And I walked out, and I jokingly said to them, "Oh, the ghost is in the back room. It's messing with the light right now." So they both jumped up and went, and were like, "Oh, let's go check it out," and started walking towards the door to the back room. And they got about halfway there, and the door swung open by itself. And they did like a complete 180 and ran up the stairs instead. So it was a pretty funny story to have been there. But that was like the closest I ever saw to seeing an actual ghost in the place. Although there were a lot of stories. I had a guy came in one night. He was working as a bouncer with me. I was the bartender. And he worked one night. I sent him into the basement to get some beer to fill up the cooler behind the bar. And he came back up just minutes later without the beer and went, "So, what, is this place haunted or something?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, they say that." And he swore he saw the ghost standing at the bar in the basement. And we had it was a double-level bar. So, and he quit the next day. I mean, that's actually true.
What? No.
He swore he saw the ghost and he quit the next day. So, but I never saw anything there after working all that time. So,
Kelley, what is it? You always hear. What is the deal? Because you never hear about haunted stories at like an office building. It's always like a bar or like a hotel. Like those are like the two big ones, right? And maybe like an old house or something. But it's never just like, "Oh, I was working at Subway and I found the ghost that haunts our Subway." You know what I mean?
The ghost of Subway.
Yeah.
There was a girl who had actually gotten killed in the bar back in the I think it was late 70s or early 80s. It had been a discotheque back then. And we actually had the copy of the newspaper story hanging up on the wall because they kind of, the owner kind of liked to spread the ghost story around because it actually would kind of brought business in, honestly. People would ask us about it. But a girl actually did die there. She was, hit by a piece of flying glass from an ashtray, beer bottle, broken glass, and it cut her neck, and she actually bled to death before the ambulance could get there. So,
Oh my God.
sad story, but
Wow.
kind of helped fuel the whole haunted story too. So,
So what do you think, Kelly? Do you think you actually saw a ghost?
I don't know. You know, there were a couple of other times when like my immediate boss, not the owner, but his daughter, she came by once, went through that same door, right? And I was standing at the bar, I was cutting limes, and then she came back out, and I started talking to her. I never looked at her. I just saw her out of the corner of my eye. And then I turned, because she wasn't answering me when I asked the question, so I turned to look at her, and she wasn't there. And then she walked out of the door just a split second later, and I was kind of looking at her kind of funny, and she went, "You just saw the ghost, didn't you?" So,
All right.
but
Now,
know,
Kelly.
what I thought was her out of the corner of my eye. So
I know you're working at this bar. Were you getting high off your own supply here? I mean, you know, I know
we
the
were
shifts
definitely-
at bars.
You know what? I
I'm
don't.
just saying they get long. You know, no judgment here. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, I get you. I was actually the second level of bosses there. I was one of the bar managers. So,
Hmm.
and it was a pretty lucrative job, I got to admit. You know, for the time period, and it was pretty good work for me. So I didn't want to blow that. And we were definitely not allowed to drink at all while we were working. So I also have pancreatitis, so I don't drink.
Oh, okay. All right. That's a pretty strong
I found
alibi.
when I was working I found when I was working as a bar manager, the people who were bartenders would either be full-blown alcoholics or they wouldn't drink at all. It was there was like no in between.
That makes sense. So like Kelly, you're a skeptical person, I think, right? So like, what do you think is your best
I am.
explanation of events here?
It was an older building, so probably just some faulty electrical wiring. And there's a really good chance that when I came back out making a joke that I didn't fully close the door all the way.
Okay.
That's what I've always thought. And
That works for me.
I really loved. Yeah, right. That worked for me too. But it was so funny to watch the other two people just do that 180-degree turn and run up the stairs. It was pretty good.
That is pretty wild that somebody would leave. I guess they didn't need the money because, like, look, if I find a place and it's actually haunted, one, that might actually want me to stay, but two, I'd just be like, look, man, in this economy, I gotta, dude, I gotta do it. If the ghosts tip well, I don't even care. You know what I mean? So
yeah, right.
I guess it.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, you know, depending on how spiritual the person is, you know, that he may take that ghost as a serious threat on his life. I mean, I can certainly see some people that I know in my personal life would probably make the same decision. But me, I'm probably the one who's going to go investigate it, do the 180 and march right over to the door and figure out what's going on.
I'm gonna call the Ghostbusters, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta get their help on this. But hey, Kelly, that's a really fun story. I really appreciate you calling in on that. We are going to be doing some fun stories next week as well in our Halloween thing. So hopefully you're going to be sticking around for that.
I was kind of hoping this would be a lead up to that. So.
Oh yeah, this is the beginning of the layup. And next week we're going to be dunking for you. Okay? So I'm serious. Halloween is it's like our show's holiday. It really is. It's what we're going to be doing stuff for us. But anyway, Kelly, thanks so much for supporting the show and calling in. Really appreciate your time. And that was Kelly, ladies and gentlemen, who's been on this show before and who also appears on some other shows too. So he's sticking around and giving us a call. We love that. So thanks again, Kelly. And with that out of the way, I need to show you guys some clips from the other shows that happen here at the Atheist Community of Austin. So check it out.
Certainly there are divided families, you know. Yeah. Christ said that he was going to do that. Hey. So, you know.
Is that a fulfilled prophecy?
I suppose so, right? Just look to the trees, Aaron.
I want to believe in the ice wall, baby. I want to go see the ice wall. Book me a first class trip to the ice wall. I'll pay whatever I got. Where the did we get our penguins and
bring me the ice?
The Lord turned me from my wretched ways and I'm forgiven. And it's like,
wow, that's so nice. So you can still do whatever you want, which it's funny that they claim that atheists are only atheists because we just want to sin and we want to do whatever we want when they do the same shit.
I hear you talk about it. It's like it's an embarrassment to us Christians that we've had slavery in the Bible.
Well, it should be, yeah. I think the ownership of other people should be an embarrassing thing, yeah.
God is not anti-slavery. He's a proponent of slavery.
Why aren't you embarrassed by that?
Well, the difference between you and me is I am a researcher. You are not.
You're the researcher? Look, Shannon, Ben Dan's a researcher. We're just a couple of who don't know anything. So that's why I'm asking you, Ben Dan.
I'm looking at my degree, like, what a waste of money.
And welcome back to the show. Real quickly, I want to tell you guys about some other ways you can support the show. One of that is by going to become a member. If you want to do that, you can click the join button that exists on the YouTube page. If you're watching it there, you'll get emojis for the chat. Your name gets highlighted, and you'll be immune to the chat timeouts. And you can do that all for as little as 99 cents a month. So check that out if you haven't done that already. And also, if you shop at Amazon, there's another great way you can support the ACA at no extra cost to you. All you have to do is visit tiny.cc/Amazon Smile ACA and designate the Atheist Community of Austin as your selected charity, because we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and Amazon will donate a portion of their profit directly to the ACA. So definitely something you should consider if you haven't already. It's a pretty neat thing. But anyway, we have some other people who want to talk to us. So Brennan, I hope you're ready.
Yes, absolutely.
The calls keep on coming. Next one that's coming up is from Phatman. That's Phatman spelled with PH. Phatman calling in from Oregon. Phatman, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, thank you for taking my call. First of all, I want to say to Brennan, you're doing a great job, man. I hope to see you on more shows, or if you're going to start your own, I'd love to see it.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
With that said, I wanted to call about the dinosaur. Oh, the guy who was talking about discovering the dinosaur fossils and finding the red blood cells.
Yeah, dragons are dinosaurs, right? I mean, and dinosaurs are dragons, obviously.
Yeah. Now, what was the lady that he said? The lady's name, the scientist that said that there were red blood cells or something like that. I can't remember the name.
That's Mary Schweitzer. So Mary Schweitzer is very interesting because her work obviously is controversial, but not in the sense that it's fringe. She is a real scientist. She does work in real stuff. It's more controversial in the sense of how to properly interpret her results, whether or not what they examined in the bone marrow is actually the results of protein, and whether those proteins are the results of red blood cells or collagen as well. They say that they found collagen in there. That is the kicker, and that's what people have talked about. I've read pro people who are in the science camp who support it, and people who are also, again, people know more about the stuff than I do, who also say that it might not be that kind of evidence. So it is an interesting thing to talk about.
Well, no, it was funny that you brought it up because I think it was last night I saw I like to watch a lot of these different shows, and I think it was Paula Gia. He actually interviewed, and I'm pretty sure this is the lady because it sounds exactly like what you were saying, and she completely debunked it. She said that no, it was not. I don't remember what she said it was, but I don't think it was the protein cells or anything like that.
Well, I know
completely debunked it.
That's funny because I know Paul. I know a lot of other creators, and it's like I don't get to keep up with everybody's stuff. I just know too many of them now. But anyway, I don't know if he actually talked to her or not. If he did, that's really cool. I know for a fact that she has denied the claims that young Earth creationists have made, in that it's like an actual preserved, red blood cell. Okay, that's not exactly what that discovery is. It is the sequence of proteins that would make up that of a red blood cell. Okay, so it's not like she's taking a drop of blood from a dinosaur and is looking at that blood. It's a bit more complicated than that. So that's probably what she's talking about based on what I know, but I haven't seen that particular interview, so I don't know.
Well, he actually talked to her. It's recorded. He actually interviewed her, and he played the interview. And I can't remember what she said, and I just watched it last night, but then again, I don't remember half of what.
Oh, I got you. I know she's not saying that her discovery wasn't important or didn't have, interesting implications. Because there's several articles that have been written about her. Again, she was on John Perry's channel, and talked about that. So, it is an interesting thing, but again, it's one of those things that, folks that like Answers in Genesis and stuff will just take it and run with it. So,
if I could interject quickly,
go ahead, Brennan.
Go ahead.
It's also a similar process as to my understanding of what specifically was discovered. We have like a rough genome for dinosaur species. Like we have a rough sequence of DNA for them by taking multiple fossil samples, and what parts of the DNA have not fully succumbed to time. We've been able to kind of create a skeleton almost of dinosaur DNA, which has allowed us to kind of see into the past at these creatures. And as I understand it, what was discovered was not necessarily red blood cells that you and I would have going through us, but what could be identified as red blood cells. So I think maybe in a similar way to the fact that some fossils end up being fossilized, and as we're discovering them, millions of years later, there'll be a disgusting black smear on the inside of the fossil, which turns out to have been the blood inside of the creature when it died. So what happened with the person who discovered the red blood cells, I believe she had cut into a bone to study the marrow specifically.
Yes.
And had seen the telltale signs of that red blood cells inside of it, which is part of the reason that it was kind of controversial, because it was actively damaging not only a fossil, but the remnants of which are going to be hard for us in the future to... There's so many fossils that we have, and we don't know which ones are going to have any kind of red blood cells in them in the same way that she found the ones that she supposedly found. So, how many fossils do we cut into looking for them to kind of confirm this,
Yep.
Very interesting, though.
What you're
Very,
saying
very
sounds-
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, what you're saying sounds a lot like, as I said, it was just last night. I'm pretty sure it was just last night. And I saw it, and she was debunking a lot of young Earth, because that's what the whole thing was about, was debunking what young Earth was saying about it. And
yeah,
like I said, I really enjoy watching these shows.
I'm so glad.
Live, I was like, hey,
Yeah, thanks for calling in about it. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. Maybe I'll message Paul after the show or something. But yeah, I know she's talked about it in interviews and stuff, and it's very clear that it's not what a lot of people actually think it is, in that being that it's evidence for dinosaurs only being a few thousand years old. So that's the main takeaway. The specific nuances onto what are the actual implications of her discovery are far beyond my pay grade. So I'll have to leave it to her to speak on that, or anybody else in the field. But Phatman, thanks for calling in and giving your take on that. Yeah, and thanks for letting us know about what was going on Paul's channel. Paul's pretty cool guy. I'll the opinions of the host of the ACA do not necessarily reflect that of the ACA. However, you should go check out Paul's channel. Paul Apology is pretty cool. He does a lot of stuff, and he hasn't been on this show in a long time, so I'll have to get him on at some point in the future. But real quick, before we get to another call here, I want to let you guys know that we have a merch store. That's one of the ways you can support this show and rock the stuff. I heard quite a bit of you bought last month's t-shirt, so I hope you are getting to this month's t-shirt as well, because every single week we always have, it's not every single week, every single month we always have a special limited edition item, which this month is also another one of our t-shirts. Then of course you can always get the regular Truth Wanted swag, the beanies, cell phone cases, tote bags, all the other stuff as well. So check that out if you haven't already. But if you buy some of this stuff, please tag me on Twitter. Like, I want to see you guys, you know, wearing it, or at least buying it. Like that makes me feel good whenever I see that. So do that if you have not already, or if you're considering buying something. If you want to listen to audio only versions of this show, you can do that at tiny.cc/AEN podcast for your one-stop shop for all of our shows in audio form, including Truth Wanted and all the other fun stuff that we have. With that, I also just want to remind you as well that we've been asking for submissions for next week's special. I didn't bring this up earlier, but today is going to be the last day you can submit your stories that we may or may not be able to use for next week's special event. I'm not going to give any spoilers on this. I'm not going to tell you how we're going to do this, but if you have a story, real or fake, that you want to share with us, go to tiny.cc/TW stories and let us know. The deadline for that is going to be midnight tonight. Okay, so if you're listening to this later on this night, pause and give us your story, and then you can finish the episode and see, right? Because like, we want to have your stories in our special event, and we'll see what we can do with them. But for now, let's go ahead and talk to somebody else who is trying to maybe correct the record with me. I might be wrong about everything I just said, and Rick might be the one to tell me. So we're going to talk to just lost Rick there. Rick, if you want to try to call us again, let me know. I think your call just got terminated, though. For now, we're actually going to talk to Jamie, who's calling in from Texas about something completely different here. Jamie, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call again. Ghost stories coming up, and because of spooky season, but also
Spooky
conspiracies
season,
in general.
Yeah.
People keep saying, look with your own eyes, trust your eyes. We live on a flat level plane, therefore the Earth's flat. Or I saw a ghost, I know what I saw. And I think people just trust their own senses far, far, far too much, and don't realize how fallible they are and how easily tricked they are. And it frustrates me to no end, especially when people come at me saying, hey, why don't you look with your own eyes? It's like, dude, I'm really quite severely visually impaired, and I have floaters and flashes and weird stuff in my vision all the time. I see ghosts all the time because they're little bits of floaty stuff in my eyes. So I can't trust anything I see. Why do you trust what you see? Why do you think you're perfect? Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring that up, how fallible the human senses are. There's a pretty cool, I'd say it's fairly interesting kind of a YouTube experiment that people will do, where they'll have a prosthetic hand or a stand-in hand that they'll place into a container, and they'll have your hand go where you can't see it. They'll stimulate both your hand and the prosthetic hand at the same time to mimic the feeling of what the fake hand would be feeling. And then at the end of the experiment, they'll normally cause some kind of harm onto the hand, causing an extremely visceral reaction from whoever is undergoing that experiment. And it really, really does go to show you just how fallible the human mind is. We attach anything that we can to whatever we can, whatever kind of meaning that we can garner from what is around us. Pattern seeking and recognition, it's literally hardwired into our DNA. It's truly fascinating to me to kind of experience the cognitive dissonance that some of these people go through to look hundreds, if not thousands of years of empirical data in the face and go, oh, well, that doesn't matter. Who cares? Clearly what I think is right because I'm infallible. Just the level of,
I think what it is
that goes into it.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Oh, and there's all kinds of experiments. A couple that always bring, because I'm thinking of the visual. A couple that come to mind for me. There's one where they had people look into a screen, and they had an eye tracking camera. And what a lot of people don't know about your vision is that every time your eyes move, even a little bit, your vision turns off slightly. It's a way to stop yourself from getting motion sick. Your body's developed this. But in that split second of blindness, your brain assumes that whatever was there before will still be there when your vision comes back. And in that split second, they would remove elements from the scene. And it would take a long time for people to realize that, like, that bike's gone, and that building's gone, and the clouds have gone, and the sun has gone, until it's like, oh, hang on, everything's different. It's like, yep, it was all happening right in front of your eyes because we took these things away when you're literally blind. And another one is an experiment they did where it's a video and it's like, okay, watch this basketball being passed around by a bunch of people. Just keep watching the ball. Count how many times the ball is passed. And you watch it, and you count. So, okay, who noticed the gorilla? And everyone's like, what?
Right.
And in the middle of the scene, a man in a gorilla suit walks straight past the screen, and people don't even notice it because they're too busy watching the ball.
It's true. That video is really crazy to look at. I saw that so long ago. I can't remember what my first response to it, but I definitely shown that to people and they totally miss it, which is just really funny. I like how you're talking specifically about like how the fallibility of literal human sight. And like I'm extrapolating this conversation and thinking about just the privilege of anecdote people have in their assessment of the world, right? You could show all kinds of statistics about who actually has money in this world, for example, but people will say, "Oh, it's actually all Jewish people who have the who are the elites," right? Because I saw this Jewish rich person on TV, and that must mean that all the other ones are like that. Or you can do this with a number of things, right? And I'm of course talking about racial stereotypes, but that just happens with stereotypes of all kinds of things. So it is interesting that people like just trust themselves more than they trust people who, like, I don't know, study this stuff for a living, right?
Yeah. And I think that that movements like the ACA and initiatives to try and bring more critical thinking and skepticism into the world are important, because it does help you avoid stuff like our flawed input, like the data we're getting from the world through our senses is flawed, and then we're using flawed reasoning like confirmation bias, the gambler's fallacy, like, oh, I've had 5 losses in a row, I'm due for a win. You aren't, though. You know, that kind of thing. Right. So yes, it just frustrates me somewhat. I don't know where I'm really going with this call other than to kind of rant a little bit, but I just hope that people, unfortunately, I'm preaching to the choir. Most of the people watching this stream and listening are skeptical and are aware of our flaws and are cognizant of it. But please spread the word if you can.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Jamie. I mean, there's a reason why I'm hosting this show, right? I do believe in the mission of the ACA. I want to try to promote that kind of secular humanism, that skepticism, as much as I humanely can. It does suck because a lot of the calls that we do take on these shows, it does feel like we're preaching to the choir, because people who are interested in skeptical content are going to be skeptics, right? But you'll always see messages, whether it's through our comments or through emails, or for people who are current volunteers in the organization who say, yeah, I started thinking about stuff because I watched an ACA show, and that's why we keep doing it, you know? And so even if you don't get the opportunity to be on any kind of show like this, or even do stuff on YouTube, I still think you can make the most difference by talking to the people you most immediately know. Because if you show a clip of me to, like, I don't know, your crazy aunt or something, she may listen to me, but she's probably more likely to listen to you because, like, you're related to her and she knows you. She doesn't know me. I'm just some guy on the internet, right? So anyway, that's my thoughts on it.
A bit of epistemology goes a long way. I won't take any more of your time, but I will say I want to try and get there next Friday. I will miss some of the show because I clock off work at 7, I'm afraid. So I haven't learned how to teleport yet, I'm afraid.
I gotcha. Well, I will be hanging out afterwards. And you know, I'll be talking to folks. Now, we did show in the promo that Aaron and MD Aware will be there, and they're going to be there on the show. They're going to be remoting in, though. They live in Canada, so they're not going to be making it there, but I will be there. And of course, The crew, a lot of the crew that helps out behind the scenes are also going to be there. So hopefully I get to see you there, Jamie, and anybody else that wants to come next week. It's going to be a party. So
it was great when I came there last time. Can vouch. Come along.
Yeah. Thanks again for calling in, Jamie. Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Yeah, and what he's talking about, it didn't actually happen on Truth Wanted. I was hosting an episode of Talk Heathen. Those of you who saw the episode, he called in when I was on Talk Heathen, and I said, "Oh man, you should really be here right now. What are you doing, Jamie?" Because he said he was in Austin, and then like an hour later, like after the show was gone, Jamie came to the studio, and I got to meet him and take a picture with him. It was really cool. So. I know we're plugging this thing really hard, but if you can come to Austin next week, or if you're around the area, come on down. It's going to be really cool. There we go. We got a little thing for that too. Studio broadcasts are going to also happen on Sunday as well. We got Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience that are going to be happening this next weekend. So if you're still sticking around in the Austin area for the weekend, you can come Friday night to the special Halloween episode, and then Sunday you can watch Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience do their thing too. Talk Heathen starting at 1, Atheist Experience starting whenever 4:30. I almost forgot the time there. Yeah, 4:30. So check that out if you haven't already. Brennan, you having a good time so far?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could add something on that last call that we just had, you know, the talking to your friends and it being more important to them to hear it from you, it rings absolutely true. As a truck driver, I end up talking to a lot of people, especially other truck drivers, and I get some crazy stuff coming from some of these people, and I'm always connected to them by 1 or 2 connections removed. So they're less likely to take what I'm saying seriously, especially because I'm a younger guy too. There's a lot of that assumption that I don't know anything, which, I'll be the first to tell you. There's a lot that I don't know and that I want to learn. But hearing it from someone who cares about you is absolutely the way to get a point across 100 times better. I can't tell you how many articles I've read from people who mean good, that want me to learn something about their opinion, where ultimately the article it's just a hit piece with a lot of opinion in it and absolutely no adherence to facts. And being someone who knows them, I try my best to kind of break it down for them, why that opinion that is not only shared by the article, but is clearly shared by them, is so bad. It's awful sometimes. They're really, really bad.
It is. And you know what? You're right about the truck culture being different. Okay. I say this because in a different life, I was an account sales manager for a company, and I had to do a ride along with a guy who was delivering some stuff. And I had a conversation with him. I didn't know him super well, but he started telling me about how he found out how his nephew was gay. And he was like a young kid. I think he was like 12 or something. And he was saying that he was gay. And he was just like, I just don't know how to deal with that. Like, I just want him to be, a man. Like, I don't want him to be made fun of and stuff. And I had this whole conversation with him on like, wait, does being gay take away from his manhood? And also, like, what do you think being a man means? And is that value important to him as it is to you? And it was just like, I had a good conversation, like a long conversation with this dude, because we were driving for, the whole day together. And like, that was really meaningful. And that was a really good connection, something that I can't necessarily do in about the 10 minutes or so that I take with the calls on this show. So I'm serious when I say talking to other people that is the most effective form of activism you can do if you really want to challenge people and possibly change their minds. I do think changing people's minds is important sometimes.
I have spent in upwards of 5 hours in one phone call with a fellow employee at my job, just hashing out everything he believes. And like, even if I grant every single one of his opinions and thoughts on topics, it really just never gets me to the point that he's at and what he believes. He's real big in the replacement theory right now, and he's got all of these.
Ooh, replacement? Like you mean like
Yeah,
racial white
yeah.
replacement, or
He
not white replacement, but like the theory
minorities
that
replacing
minorities
whites.
replacing
Yeah,
white people. Yeah. Okay. Ooh,
yeah.
yeah.
He's real big into that. He's also really big into the Great Reset. He talks a lot about Human 2.0. Like he's all the way down these like I'd call them Q adjacent. I wouldn't call him a QAnon believer outright because he's just a little too critically thinking.
Mm.
But boy, is he Q adjacent. He will bring up some of those talking points, and I'm like, that is so close to you just full out saying what the subtext is. Like you're real close there.
Dude, but that's what it is, right? Like the people who occupy, we're going on a serious tangent here, but this is really critical, I think, is the people who occupy specifically those spaces that talk about Q stuff may not be full in believers on everything that Q has to say, but they are a part of these communities because they have other values that they agree with, particularly conservative ones usually, right?
Yeah.
That are part of this patchwork of different ideas. One day I'll do a dive on Parler and why it's the worst place in the world. But like if you just go to like Parler or Truth Social, like you'll see where people get these ideas from. It's just other people talking about it, not even necessarily full on believers, but just casual, again, like anecdotal observations people make about like, there's more Mexican people that have moved into my neighborhood recently. Must be evidence of the replacement theory stuff, right?
You need go no further than just the comment section of any Fox News article.
Yeah,
There is all of the evidence that you need that not only are Q adjacent communities a majority of Q talking, but these people seek out the media that confirms it for them.
Yeah.
And whatever it takes, they will fight for that thought and fight
It's
for
true.
those opinions.
Which is why you should send clips of this show to everybody you know, just so you can put a seed in people's heads, right? But anyway, that's me plugging too much. Right now, I also just want to tell you guys about how you can contact me and the other people that do the show. If you want to email the show, it's truth@atheist-community.org, or you can reach out to the ACA at tv@atheist-community.org and see what's going on our website at atheist-community.org. And there is a Facebook group. It's run by fans for fans. So if you want to see what other people are saying about Truth Wanted, go to tiny.cc/FBTWG to interact with other fans. So thank you to everybody that does all the fan stuff. It's really awesome. And now I think we should go back to calls here. We're going to talk to Marcus, who is calling in from Texas. Marcus, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, Dan, and hi, Brennan. Good to see you on the show. I've never been on a show myself, so I can imagine it's kind of nervous, but I think you're doing a great job. So,
thank you very much.
Yeah, I just had oh, you're welcome. I had a kind of a weird question. I know it might be a little bit off topic, but I know recently in the news, a lot of people probably saw what was happening with like the Alex Jones legal decision and him having to pay almost $1 billion because of these conspiracy theories that he had been propagating through his media. And I guess my question is, it seems like this should be some sort of a cautionary tale to people that if you're going to start spreading these sorts of things around, you're going to be liable either financially or in some other way for the things that you say. But I'm wondering if, and I'd like to hear what kind of both of you have to think about this, is this going to really be anything that's going to make people think twice about doing this? Or do you think that people will just continue to push their conspiracy theories irregardless?
Man, that's a great question. The truth is, this is a really unprecedented situation, right? Not only is this lawsuit incredibly huge, one of the biggest ones in American history over a situation like this, it's also talking about events that happened several years ago, almost a decade ago, right? Is when the Sandy Hook shootings originally happened and when Jones made the statements, and now we're finally catching up to it. I mean, the law really had to go through this whole process with all of these families to finally see consequences for actions like this. So I don't know what the precedent is going to be set for stuff in the future. The thing about Alex Jones is he runs InfoWars, which is one of the largest conspiracy theory promoting websites, not only in the United States, but in the world. He has an audience of over 1 million people that look at his stuff all the time. And there's other websites that will promote stuff that's just as dangerous, but maybe don't have the kind of presence that he does. So I think you could clearly make the case there that, of course, Jones's rhetoric was inspiration for other people to do the actions that they did because they have a long time trust in Jones. He's been on the air for a really, really long time. So I don't know. I don't know what the future is going to behold. I want people to be held accountable for shit like this. Obviously, Alex Jones is a piece of shit and he can go fuck himself. I don't really care about him. But I hope, if anything, other people will see that this is going to be really bad news for you, especially if you're not careful. Just talking about random ass bullshit on the air. But anyway, Brendan, what are your thoughts on the Alex Jones stuff?
Well, if history is anything to go off of, unfortunately, when you challenge people on their horrendous, awful beliefs, normally they double down.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a strong belief that not only is this going to embolden Jones, but it's likely going to embolden people like Jones. As it's, of course, going to just be yet another layer on top of their beliefs that everything in the United States is corrupt. And that they are the grassroots movement that's going to fix it, when in reality they're only impeding justice and actively harming us. The truth of the matter is that the damage done by Jones is incalculable, and the true cost of what has happened because of him being represented by this $1 billion figure, regardless if that's what he ends up paying or not, it shows that the people involved and the jurors especially understand the ramifications of what he has done and what he said. Now, whether or not that's going to translate into a better dynamic with these people in our society in the future, I don't mean to say these people derogatorily, but people who have a proclivity to this kind of conspiratorial ideology, you know, I certainly hope that we have better accountability for media in general, and especially this like tabloid rag that is the entirety of this Alex Jones sphere.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And you brought up a good point too, Brandon, which is that already people are saying, oh, the reason why he's having to pay so much is also just because the world is out to get him because he was speaking the truth, or that he wasn't actually responsible for these things. You know, he's just trying to figure out the truth. I mean, there's a lot of people that are going at these angles too. In fact, Jones is already doing this himself. They brought this up in the defamation trial, right? He was making memes about the judge and saying how she's an awful human being, and also about the witnesses in the case. And they brought this up in the case itself to talk about how Jones is a bad faith actor and isn't taking any of this stuff seriously. I mean, I do think something is like mentally wrong with him, right? Like I think that's pretty obvious. That's pretty apparent. But for him to have the platform that he does and the damage that he's done, you're right. It's incalculable. I think you have to be really brazen and really, quite frankly, stupid, but also just really, really brazen to do what he's done. And America loves those kinds of people. If politics in the last 10 years has shown us anything, is that America openly embraces people who they deem are challenging the system, when in reality they really are just grifting other human beings. The story's been told time and time again, and it's going to be told again, you know. But that's our takes on it. Time. Yeah, what do you think, Marcus?
I mean, yeah, I kind of agree. And I kind of had a follow-up question, if I may, and I'll make it real quick. one of the things, and I guess, I agree with you on Alex Jones being the waste of humanity that he seems to be. But I guess this follows up a little bit with maybe the perception part that you were talking about. One of the things that I guess not affected me, but like surprised me the most, because this is not his first set of legal problems, was before, I think it was in his divorce when he tried to portray himself as, oh, I'm just an actor. This is not really what I'm saying is not really what I'm.
Yes. Let me clarify on that. I've seen other hosts from this community that have talked about this information, and they've done it incorrectly. The problem is I just know way too much about Alex Jones, right? So the case that happened there was a divorce court thing, right? Figuring out, assets, kids, all that kind of stuff that happens. Jones did not actually testify to this fact, right? Jones was not saying that he was an actor and that this is what he said. He actually didn't testify at all in that case. It was his lawyer that was making the argument in that case. And in fact, in previous legal stuff that's happened with Jones, he usually hasn't testified in a lot of stuff. He has testified in some of the more recent stuff, and starting with the deposition trials, what's happening in Sandy Hook. I don't know why. I guess he felt like he wanted to. But yeah, there's a bit of misinformation that goes on there where people are saying, oh, well, Jones actively admits that he's an actor. As someone who's gotten the opportunity to see Alex Jones in real life, and as someone who has followed his work for a few years now, I can tell you, I think he seriously believes a lot of the stuff that he says. I know that he over exaggerates way too much and will make shit up on the fly, but I really do think he thinks that there is something bigger and grander going on, even if he gets the details wrong or exaggerates some of those details. So people who say like, oh, he just knows that he's fake, and I'm not convinced of that personally, but he hasn't testified to that either. So.
Okay. Well, I mean, I did not know, and maybe I was just kind of going on what I heard. But now, I guess now that I know you are the paragon of Alex Jones knowledge, I feel like the next time he does something stupid, which will probably be pretty soon, I'll give you a call back and maybe get your reaction on that. But yeah, thanks for taking my call. I know you got to wrap up the show, but yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Brennan. Have a good night.
Thank you, Marcus. Thanks for calling in on that. But yeah, you want to know when Alex Jones does something stupid? It's every day. It really is every day. And I'm not even
probably
exaggerating.
Before the show's over.
Well, his show happens every weekday for 4 hours a day. And he hosts for usually 3 of those 4 hours. And it's just him talking. Like one of the podcasts, a guest who is on, Jordan Holmes, called Knowledge Fight, examines some of the rhetoric that Jones uses every day, and he's constantly saying, there is clippable moments that happen pretty much every day on that show. He just says so much of it, and to be honest, the people who aren't going to buy his crap aren't watching his show, so nobody really knows about a lot of it. But man, he has said some awful things.
Add in real quick.
Yeah.
So there was a meme moment from him a while ago where he is very up in arms and very agitated and very energetic. And he says that they're putting chemicals in the water that are turning the frogs gay.
Yeah.
And obviously that's laughable to phrase it like that. But in actuality, while his phrasing is absurd and obtuse, it's true. Some of the pesticides that were being used in farming operations were actually causing frogs to develop both sets of reproductive organs. So lots of frogs were developing into sexual maturity and having several sets of testes and several sets of ovaries that were developing in like simultaneity between these, seemingly normal frogs. And it was caused by runoff from fertilizer. And it could have come across so much better from him. And of course, it wasn't something that was widely touched on at the time either.
Yeah, well, this is the problem, right? Because that is probably Alex Jones's most infamous viral clip, I would say. I think that's the one that people most commonly associate with him. and it's really an off the cuff moment. First of all, he has said wilder things than that. But the problem with that clip is that because of that underlying grain of truth that you're talking about, in which, yes, there were tests for gay bombs, there were tests for that happened to change the chemical makeup and you know, things with frogs. People have said, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe this Alex Jones guy is on to something. That clip has actually probably brought more business to him than we could ever expect it to, because people will find that Wikipedia article on gay bombs or something, or look at the history of that clip and see that there is something to it. So it's those half truths that are actually the most dangerous. And really one of the most awful things about this whole Sandy Hook stuff is, at the time when it was happening, information changes as the story was progressing. And when that happens, when new things are figured out, people will see that as, oh, this must be a conspiracy. There must be some sort of cover up. They don't want us to figure out the truth when we haven't even assessed the full situation on things, which is why there's still people, even after this entire series of trials has happened, that still say that the Sandy Hook stuff didn't actually happen as mainstream news media has reported, and that there were actors or holograms being used. So it is incredibly sad. It is very sad. But, you know, some people are just going to want to believe what they want to believe. And I don't know what to do about that. I don't know if anybody does. But hey, on that note, I think it's time that we start to wrap up today's program. Brennon Goodson, thank you so much for being our first experimental guest. And I say experimental guest because you are the first who has filled out that form without us inviting you to it. I hope you had a good time on tonight's show.
I had a blast, and hopefully in the future, someone else will manage to take a chance for me, and I could maybe be on again. I would certainly love to, and have some more callers on, and, you know, just further the conversation.
Yeah, well, for now, of course, we are scheduling other content creators, other authors and researchers and people, you know, that we typically get for this show. But we'll see if we'll try this again in the future. We'll see if other people want to see more of this kind of thing, where we just take people who just want to be on the show. And hey, if you want to volunteer for the ACA in any capacity, check out the links to that in the description, where we are looking for volunteers for stuff all the time. And so if you like to talk to tomatoes, I don't know why I was going in that route, but hey, if you like this show, please like and subscribe, and give us a comment. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. If you're watching this on YouTube, please give us 5 stars on whatever podcast app you have. That always helps out the show. I, of course, want to give a thank you to the wonderful, fantastic, amazing, stupendous crew that helps make this show happen every single week. And we're going to switch to the crew cam there. There's our crew. Oh, shit. Watch out, Greg. There's a dinosaur right behind you. Oh, no. The camera cut out. He had AirPods in, and the dinosaur was right behind him. He couldn't hear it. But anyway, that's Greg, our executive producer. Yeah, I guess he's gone now. I don't know what's going to happen with the show. But hey, thank you to the crew for making the dream happen every week. And thank you to everybody who listens and watches this show. I am Objectively Dan. That's going to be it for tonight. Remember to always keep wanting truth. And I'll see you next time.
Watch The Non-Prophets and join the hosts in the live chat, Sundays at 3 p.m. Central, between The Atheist Experience and Talk Hidden. Visit tiny.cc/YTNP.